Escape from Paradise. Prologue. The morning sun broke the horizon as the man came to the middle of the barren and empty field. No vegetation, no plants, no hint of life at all. He took a slow, deliberate breath, drawing in the crisp, fresh morning air. He scanned the sterile ground as if seeking something. Blueprints rolled up under his arm, the plans assembled themselves in his imagination. The beginnings, the tools, the workers, the final glorious result, the largest, most spectacular work ever completed. He knew it would take many, many years to build, and many good men and women would die in the work. But this structure would save far more lives than it would cost. His mental survey was interrupted by a powerful hand on his shoulder. The gesture fortified the man, and he could feel his father's love. "Shall we get started?" The commanding voice filled the morning air as if the sun rose a second time, giving life to the ground and making time itself move on. The man tensed himself in glad anticipation. Let's get to it. The work began. He knew the foundation stage would be slow, arduous, and costly, but he felt immune to the discouragement. He slid his hand along the blueprints, knowing he would review them often, not because he needed to, but because he loved seeing how they perfectly reflected his father's heart. The man could see his love and wisdom in the plan, and he delighted in contemplating it. The words shook the ground. "Son, this is where it all begins." Chapter 1. The water felt good, and Adam took a moment to enjoy the cool, refreshing stillness before pushing off the surface. Wow, I went deeper than I thought. His arms strained against the water as he pulled himself upward. Why was it taking so long? He swam harder. I need to breathe! His smooth stroke turned to a panicked thrashing. He opened his eyes but saw nothing. Will Dad jump in and get me? Adam had never been underwater this long. His thinking became cloudy, and he could feel his consciousness slipping away. Finally, he broke the surface with a splash and gulped in the precious air. He was so relieved to have made it that it took several more breaths before he realized something's wrong with the air. It seemed thin, empty, and there was an eerie stillness. Wiping the water from his face, he opened his eyes to find the ladder to climb out of the pool. What in the world? Where? There was no ladder, or even sides around the pool. Instead, weeds, rocks, and tall grass surrounded him. A pond? How am I in a pond? To his left, Adam spotted a sandy area where he thought he could climb out. Reaching the sand, he waded out of the pond and climbed up the bank, water raining from his body. What is this place? Mom? Dad? There was no swimming pool, no people, in fact, no sign of civilization, except to the west, the morning shadows pointed toward an old, ramshackle cottage in the distance. He surveyed the countryside for any other cabin or housing. Nothing. His mind racing, he turned a full circle. There must be someone around here. He started up a small rise where he would be able to see better. His stomach knotted and he suppressed tears. His walking soon turned to a frantic running, desperate to get to a vantage point where he could see better. Arriving atop the hill, his heart sank. As far as the eye could see, no people, no roads, not even a path. He could control his fear no longer. Tears streamed down his face, and he shouted, "Mom! Dad! Anyone! Help! Help me!" He slumped to the ground, pulled his knees to his chest, and covered his head with his arms, trying to wish his way out of this terror. Was he trapped forever in this strange, empty world? He closed his eyes and imagined his big brother walking up the hill and reassuring him. Just thinking about his brother gave Adam a moment of courage. If only he were here, he would know what to do. What would his brother do? He wouldn't freak out. He would probably go back down to the pond and wait for Mom and Dad to come find him. Adam made his way back down the hill. Finding a spot that gave him a good view of the area, he sat on the ground and leaned against a large rock. Then he sat back up with a start. The rock felt... He turned and put his hand on the boulder. It wasn't as hard as a normal rock. He picked up a small stone and rolled it in his hand. He squeezed it. Then he ran his hand through the dirt. Nothing felt right. The stone wasn't as heavy as it should be. Pebbles were too smooth. The soil didn't make his hands dirty. What is this place? Am I going crazy? He looked around, examining the landscape. Everything that was more than a few feet away seemed flat, almost like pictures on the pages of a storybook. They seemed real enough when he got close, but the farther a tree or a rock was from him, the less real it appeared. This was true of everything he could see, except... He looked back toward the cottage he had seen earlier. It was different. Even in the distance, it looked real. Adam gazed a long time at the little structure, and the longer he studied it, the more fascinated he became. What is that? Purple, red, and yellow rays emanated from the dull brown walls in all directions, subtle at first, but growing in intensity. And there were other colors he had never seen before. He blinked, then blinked again. The colors were gone. Strange. He closed his eyes and tried to remember what he had seen. The memory was so vivid it startled him. Yes, he had seen colors. They had been shooting out from the cottage. And they moved, shimmering, like light reflecting off water. Wait, no, not like water. I didn't quite describe it. This movement was different, like the movement of a living thing. Going to the one man-made structure he could see seemed to be his best chance at finding someone who could help him, but what was causing those lights? He tried telling himself it's silly to be afraid of colors. What could they do to him? It was probably just the angle of the sunlight or his mind playing tricks on him. How could there be colors he had never seen? He'd seen every color in the rainbow. Once more he squeezed his eyes closed. This time the images in his memory were even more striking. They were more than colors. It was like he had not only seen them, but felt them. And what he felt seemed like a power that he should stay away from. Still, he wanted to see them again. He wanted to know what caused them and what made them disappear. For a long time, Adam stared at the cottage. In time, the colors began to reappear. Fearful as he was, Adam had a strong sense that he should go there. It was almost as though it were a person beckoning him. But if he left the pond, there's no way his parents would be able to find him, especially if he got lost on the way to the cottage. Adam stood and walked around the pond, trying to find a place where he could see beneath the surface. If he dove back in, would it take him back home? Or would he come up somewhere else? Or would he come up at all? He looked at the murky depths and shuddered. I can't wait here forever. He turned and set out for the cottage. With the sunrise at his back, he knew the cottage was due west. If he kept on a straight course, it shouldn't be too hard to find his way back. He walked several minutes before a rustling from behind caught his attention. He spun, instinctively taking a defensive stance. There was nothing. Then he looked up and realized the sound was coming from above. A dark, churning cloud rolled toward him. As he watched, Adam could see it wasn't a cloud, but a massive flock of birds. He was struck with their beauty and movement. Their wings created a kind of whistle, and its pitch varied with their speed. As some of the birds cut back and forth or flew out to the front of the flock and circled back again, the various pitches combined into a symphony of whistles that captivated Adam. One of them landed on a branch near him. It had a bright purple throat that deepened into a darker purple breast with white bars running down the underside and a golden crest. The colors were vivid, but natural, not scary. After a moment, the bird flew from the branch and rejoined the flock, which moved slowly eastward, away from the cottage. Enthralled, Adam followed, hardly aware he was even walking. When he stopped, they would circle around him, then resume their eastward progress, as if drawing Adam along were a game. And for Adam, it was a game. Forgetting his plight for a moment, he stopped, waited for the birds to encircle him, watched them go again, and ran after them. The entertainment continued for an hour or more, But eventually, the sounds and movements of the birds became monotonous, and Adam found himself bored with the whole affair. He turned back toward the cottage and was surprised to see how far away it was now. A blinding flash made him jump. Then a crack of thunder shook his chest. Just like that, it was pouring rain. Adam stepped back under the shelter of the trees. Pushing a branch out of his way, he felt something soft touch his face. His right hand shot up to brush it away, and his fingers punctured the fuzzy little ball and were instantly wet with juice. Wow! A peach! He licked his fingers, and the juice was as sweet as candy. For the first time in this world, Adam realized he was hungry, ravenously hungry, and it was a longing that seemed to arise from something deeper inside him than just his stomach. The sudden storm had already passed. A quick bite to eat for some energy, and then I'll go explore the cottage, he thought, as he liberated the delicacy from the branch. He took a bite. Pleasure coursed through his entire body. He could feel it even in his hands and feet. He had the strange thought that he would fight to the death, if necessary, to have this peach. And yet, he didn't finish eating it. Exhilarating as the first bite was, he was so eager to get another peach, a different peach, he dropped the first one in search of a bigger, juicier one. He picked another, then another, until his arms were loaded. The load spilled when Adam's toe caught on some brush, and he stumbled, landing on his hands and knees with a large green ball underneath him. A watermelon! If there was anything Adam loved more than peaches, it was watermelon. This orchard seemed too good to be true. With a sharp rock and a little determination, Adam soon had the red juice running pleasantly down his chin as he popped one piece after another into his insatiable mouth. As he wandered through the orchard, everything Adam sampled delighted his palate. The orchard extended as far north, east, and west as he could see. There was every kind of fruit, even some that Adam had never seen before, and every bite made him want two more. But even after eating all he desired, he didn't feel full. In fact, he felt empty. Not hungry, but hollow and unsatisfied. None of that suppressed his appetite, however. The awareness of his emptiness evaporated at each impulse to eat more fruit. Soon his whole existence was little more than an unending and frustrating effort to consume enough fruit to be satisfied. As Adam ventured further into the orchard, travel became easier. Level ground, fewer obstacles, until finally Adam realized he was following what seemed to be a walking path. There must be people around here. No sooner had the thought crossed his mind than Adam heard some movement in the trees, just up ahead. Someone was walking. His darting eyes could make out nothing through the trees. As desperate as Adam had been to find people in this world, all he wanted to do now was hide. He crawled into some thick brush and sat completely still. He wanted to see this person before deciding whether to allow himself to be found. The footsteps came nearer, then slowed, then stopped. Adam held his breath. He didn't move a muscle. After a long moment, the footsteps resumed. Adam slowly moved some brush and risked a peek. His heart stopped when the opening revealed two eyes staring straight at him just a foot away.